All right, so I was reading through the patch notes and I saw that Marrow Shards has been updated. It's now got the subskill of Marrow Shards, Bone Splinters, is now 125% added damage effectiveness, up from 100%, which is pretty exciting because the subskill scales off of all the same scalars as the rest of Marrow Shards. Now, there are a ton of different changes to Marrow Shards and Bone Splinters over here, but I'm mostly going to focus on a Bone Splinters build. So let's take a look at the build and what I'm doing to make it work. So this, of course, is a Marrow Shards build. So we have to have Marrow Shards. We have plus 26, or sorry, plus 4 to our level of Marrow Shards. So we're at plus 26. And with that, we're taking pretty much everything that says more damage. What does that mean for us? Well, we are going into Bone Splinters first because that's what got the buff, and then we're turning Bone Splinters into Bone Nova. If you read, Splinter Nova is affected by all modifiers to Marrow Shards and Bone Splinters. Modifiers to the projectile speed of Bone Splinters are granted increased area for Splinter Nova. So from this, we understand that all more multipliers on this tree now also apply to Bone Splinters. So we're taking everything that does Bone Splinter damage. So we have Carving for 150% more Bone Splinter damage. Then we have Crimson Ivory for 100% increased hit damage to Bone Splinters. And then we also have Demise for 100% increased hit damage against bleeding for Marrow Shards as a whole. So that's a lot of more damage just built into the tree. We're also taking Bone Knives, which means that Marrow Shards deals significantly more damage, but no longer pierces. So it does 75% more damage over there. So that's a ton of more damage. And remember, we have our flat damage from 125% added damage effectiveness to our Marrow Shards. And then we also are going for Ivory Obliteration for a little bit more crit multi. So that's what we're doing with the skill tree here. But you might have the question, okay, we have a lot of more damage, but how are we going to solve the crit chance and how are we going to solve the flat damage? So for flat damage, we have to go to Rip Blood, which gives us Arcane Absorption. Global spell damage on hit, 4. So 4 spell damage every time we cast Rip Blood. And so if we can cast Rip Blood as fast as possible, we can get a ton of global spell damage. But then how do we cast Marrow Shards? Rip Blood has an answer for that. Whenever we hit a boss, rare enemy, or do a multi-hit with Rip Blood, we will cast Marrow Shards in the same direction. For us, direction doesn't matter because we're doing Splinter Nova, so it's going to be all around us, but we are going to be casting Marrow Shards every single time we're casting Rip Blood, basically. So Rip Blood is both going to give us global spell damage, which is going to amp our Marrow Shards and give us all the flat damage that we need. Okay. That leads to the next question, which is, we have a bunch of flat damage being cast from Rip Blood. How do we scale our attack speed to get as much flat damage as possible? And to do that, we are using Mad Alchemist Ladle, which is giving us 1% increased cast speed per 2 intelligence. So we want to be intelligence stacking. With our build right now, we have 136 intelligence. This can be refined more, of course, but this is just a basic setup. 136 intelligence is 75% cast speed. So 75% cast speed is pretty good. From that, we are pretty much intelligence stacking everywhere on our gear to make this possible. Okay, so that is our cast speed sort of solved. Let's go on to the next thing, which is crit. How are we doing crit? And to solve crit, we have Traitor's Tongue in our offhand. It's giving us 13% critical strike chance with a Traitor's Tongue equipped in the offhands. And as you can see, to get a 2 LP, it's 1 in 11. So it's really not hard to get as a 2 LP, and it's giving us plus 2 to level of intelligence skills. So a very powerful dagger for our build. Then we also have Grasp of the Blood Mage, which is giving us up to 4% spell critical strike chance. This is also pretty good. So that's giving us, between these two, 17% spell critical strike chance. And then with our base, which is 5%, 17 plus 5, 22% flat critical strike chance. So we only need to get 400% critical strike chance to overcap ourselves. So taking a look at the rest of our gear, we have up to 95% increased spell critical strike chance from our helmet, and then up to 142% increased physical spell critical strike chance on our body. So those two are both pretty much providing all the spell critical strike chance that we need. And then in our idols, we have up to 65% increased physical spell critical strike chance on our idols, and we are taking this prophesized altar to give us up to 40% increased effect of suffixes for idols in the refracted slot. So that's why we're placing this idol here, which is giving us basically double that. So it's giving us up to 130%, I believe, increased physical spell critical strike chance. So basically, just from our 3 pieces of gear alone, we're going to be something like 120% critical strike chance, right? So it's going to be pretty easy for us to overcap just from this. Then everywhere else on our gear, I'm not even going to max, right? With max, we have overcapped resistances, but just on average, we should be getting like up to 4,300 health, and then all of our resistance is capped. So I've sort of detailed how our primary skills work, but I'll talk a little bit about the secondary skills, which are Death Seal. So Death Seal is delaying the damage that we receive by 8%. Sorry, 90% of damage taken is dealt over 4 seconds, and then we're getting armor per missing health. So we are reducing our health to get a ton of armor, so we're becoming incredibly tanky just by taking Death Seal. And then we have Wave of Death on every reap or evade that we do, and Wave of Death gives us Necrotic Shred chance, so 50%, and then we're turning that into physical, so it has physical rest chance. So we also are increasing the duration and then getting haste on release. So it's just a pretty good utility skill for us, giving us a good amount of survivability and damage amp. Then Reperform is our next skill. It's super important for us. When we're in Reperform, we're getting movement speed and increased critical strike chance. So 100% increase over here, which is pretty handy. And then 100% increased damage as well, alongside 100% increased damage at low health. So 200% increased damage and 100% increased crit chance, and then an additional 24% cast speed. So we're going to be moving pretty fast. We're going to be having a lot of increased damage and crit over here. Then we're also going into armor per point of intelligence. So we're going to get 4 armor per intelligence. This is flat armor. So anything else that we have that increases armor will also apply to this. So that's what we're doing over here. And then we're finally taking Marked for Death chance, because Marked for Death is a curse that gives us like essentially elemental penetration, or sorry, just pure resistance penetration. So we're going to be taking that. And then finally, we're doing Transplant. This is going to be our mobility skill. We're going to do Rip Bloods per cast of Transplant. It's also going to apply Bone Curse, which is going to trigger every time we hit an enemy. We don't really spec into Bone Curse because we don't have the points, but it's going to be a little bit of a damage increase. And then we're going to do Fear on Departure, Fear on Arrival, and get Bone Armor, which will increase the amount of armor we're getting. So that's what we're doing for our skills. For our passives, because this is the next most important thing, we are going intelligence wherever we can, vitality over here, and then armor. We don't really care about the ward decay threshold. It's not too important for us, and we don't really care about the necrotic resist because we're pretty much capped on both. Then we put all of our points into Lich. We want all the intelligence from Apocryphia, and then all of the increased damage with Dance with Death, because we're always going to be low life. Then we're going into a little bit of physical resistance over here, and then fully into Exonerating Insight for that intelligence. Then we're going into Executioner, so we can wield the dagger in our offhand, Deathbringer for the crit chance and attack speed, and then Clairvoyant Insight for the crit multi. Finally, we're going into Corrupted Form for the more health. This will also set us to low life because it'll half our health permanently, which will give us the permanent damage increase from Dance with Death. And Impact Ward, which will give us less damage over time taken, and make our damage over time go straight to our health. We will be taking Accursed Feast in order to increase our damage leech, right? So this will keep us topped off. And then because we are a physical skill, we're going to take 3 points into 3 Plagues just to get the physical pen, and then Spectral Wounds to get us delayed hit damage from bosses and rare enemies, and some flat health. We're also going to take Mind over Body to get as much intelligence as possible, and then finally, with the rest of our points, we'll go into Unclosing Wounds, and that'll give us 120% increased damage. So we are always going to be leeching, so we're not really worried about the amount of health drain per second. And we're going to be a low life build, basically, with a ton of armor, a decent amount of ward generation, and a lot of crit. Finally, I haven't even done our blessings. Holy cow. We're going to be doing the normal blessings over here, so you're probably going to want things like mana. Actually, we don't need mana. We probably want ward per second or ward on hit. Those will be good from not Hera. What's his name? Lagon. From Age of Winter, Heroth, we want increased damage. From the Fire one, we want armor, and from Reign of Dragons, all we care about is all res. That means we can put less resistances basically into our idols and get more crit chance. And then we want crit multi from Rye. So looking at our idols, I pretty much just put down the important ones. One, you need the huge immortal idol with double crit, so crit chance and physical spell critical strike chance. And then on the woven affix, you can either get increased move speed to help your clear, or you can get more crit chance and crit multi. Both are fine. The reason why we want so much crit chance is because we're going true sight. If we can overcap our crit, which is our goal, we can get deadly strikes, which will make our crits do 300% crit multi. So this is very powerful. It'll happen 40% of the time, but it's an insane damage boost for us. This is a starter build, so I've only put as many exalted items as I can. So we are running Raven Crown for the flat spell damage that it's giving us, the armor and Marrow shards, plus level is our exalted affix. We're going to get physical spell critical strike chance, health, and Ellie res. I think with the point we're at now with our blessings intact, we actually don't need the Ellie res here. We can probably go double health. So that's a pretty big change to the build, which will give us a ton more HP. Yeah, so we're sitting at 4,500, which is pretty solid. From our armor, Immortal Regalia, we want intelligence on any of the prefixes possible, but then I'm also putting increased health and basically double health and crit chance. Those are our primary affixes over here. From our belt, we want physical damage and then double health, and then cleanse, of course, if you're going for Uber. From our rings, obviously red rings are best here, but considering this is a season starter, before you can get to red rings, what would you do? You just want simple rings that give you intelligence, physical damage, and whatever resistances you need. So as you can see, we are pretty overcapped on void and physical, so maybe these could be swapped out for healths. But you on your rings, you want void and physical res, and then physical damage and intelligence. And then on your boots, Citadel boots are pretty much the best. You're going to get reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes, so you can get up to 50% over here. And then you can get intelligence, move speed, health, and health. And then finally on your relic, you want crit multi, intelligence, and then whatever is missing from your build. So in my case, it was elemental resistance and health, but it could be whatever resistance you guys need. So that is the gearing as well. We've talked about the blessings. We've talked about the idols. Make them accordingly. The only one that's required is the huge idol in the middle. And so I'll drop this planner in the description below. I've also left open idol slots for you guys to play around with whatever you guys want. So good luck figuring it out. This is 2 LPs are pretty reasonable here because for Mad Alchemist Ladle, there's like an easy farm setup. And it's not that hard to get a 2 LP. It's 1 in 8. And then with Trader's Tongue, it's also not hard to get a 2 LP. It's 1 in 11. So both of these are reasonable to get a 2 LP. For Grasp of the Blood Mage, I only put a 1 LP because it's 1 in 5 to get a 1 LP, but then 1 in 79. So it's a little bit hard for a starter build. And then finally, True Sight Glass, just farm it up until you can get it. Before then, you can run any decent exalted item, but this is going to be your primordial item. So there you go, guys. I hope you guys enjoy the build. This is going to be a super easy build. The mana sustain is free. The leech is free. It's going to just have a lot of crit, going to have a lot of damage, going to have a lot of AoE. The damage should be really good. And honestly, once you get your red rings up, this should be uber viable. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the build, and I'll see you guys next time.